Hi everybody, so I'm back to this book Cultivated by Christin Geall, as I was so inspired by the last few videos that I had recorded where I used this as a reference color palette and took it and made my own art poetry painting, what I would call, which is sort of my style. So what I want you to do is just take the inspiration from this video. You can grab a magazine page, you can grab any type of reference book, you could grab, just a free magazine that you might find at your local library. And there's so much research that's put into advertising and how things are laid out on pages, the colors, the combination of marks. So this is just my inspiration for today. I pulled this page out because these colors are just so gorgeous and they're not colors I would typically use in my work. And what I'm gonna do is just start swatching out some colors that I think may look really good with this palette. So what I'm using right now, these are called gelatos, and these are made by Faber-Castell, and they're sort of like water soluble. It's like lipsticks, chapsticks almost, and they're supposed to be non-toxic, so I love to rub them around with my finger. But what I did is I just grabbed some colors that I may have a hard time making with my watercolor palette. So I am going to get out my favorite watercolor palette, which is from the Ocean Paper, made in Kauai, Hawaii. I just love their palettes. They sell out really fast. And so I'm going to just see what colors I can pull. However, what I've started with is just these gelatos, because look at these colors. Aren't they just beautiful? This one is, it's called Strawberry, but I just see how it sort of matches with these petals in here. I love that peach. These colors, this one in particular, would be really hard to achieve with watercolor. It's almost like a forest green with possibly a black or a Payne's gray or a purple. I love adding pops of color, and I see this particular gelato, which is called Raspberry. And so I wanted to put that down on my swatch. I also had iced coffee. So this is one, it's quite dark. It actually matches very close to the background of this page in this book Cultivated. And here's a metallic, metallic gold champagne. I love these names. And so I've just got some colors down that really I just love. I see that I'm missing some of the beautiful red and oranges, but I know that I can probably obtain those from my watercolor palette. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spray my watercolor palette to activate it, because I use quite a bit of water and quite a bit of pigment when I paint. And I have my round watercolor brush, and I'm just going to take my favorite palette and see what colors possibly would match. I think I'm going to have to do some mixing. So there's sort of this peachy color, and it has a little bit more of an orange in there. So I'm just going to sort of mix it in here. So I like that. And I'm going to add in sort of this golden yellow. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm going to kind of dip in. I like that. It sort of mimics some of the inside of the flowers there. What else do I want to do? Maybe add a little bit of this gorgeous fuchsia color and just see how that mixes in. This almost mimics that beautiful rose in the background there. So I'm just getting colors down that I love when I'm looking at this page. So what I'm going to do too is with these gelatos, I'm going to kind of turn them into watercolor. And you can see that it's still, you can still see the texture of the gelato underneath, but what I'm doing is I'm just sort of bringing out the watercolor effect to see when I actually sit down and paint with these, can I get that same watercolor? I love this color here. That's amazing. Not too sure what color that's called. I love this green. So the other thing that I like to do is grab my favorite pencil crayons. So these are Supracolour Soft II soft pencil crayons from one of my favorite Swiss art supply companies called Caran D'ache. And what I am going to do is just sort of get the end wet and just sort of play with some of the shapes that I see. I'm looking at this one here, and I feel like this color is more fitting for that beautiful rose at the top of the page. But this color, I'm not sure, I think, oh, it's just called mauve. This would be a beautiful color to kind of match these flowers in here. And so I'm just sort of playing around with my line work and my color palette. I do really like this color here. That's a great color. It's not quite as light, but if I mix that with white, and then the greens, I love this color green. There's a little bit of it in here. This green is a little bit darker. And this is just sort of getting my creative juices flowing and just seeing what I like with some of the supplies that I have, which I do have a lot of supplies because I'm a full-time artist and I do invest in higher quality supplies because I'm selling my work. So I'm just testing out. Ooh, that green's really bright. It's beautiful. It's probably very close to this one. This one's more of an earthy, natural green, but I feel like I can achieve that with mixing. So this exercise is just so much fun. I take a slightly lighter weight paper, one that's not as expensive, and I sort of map out what I want to do. And you know, this Faber-Castell gelato really made a beautiful watercolor, and it's probably one that I can use straight off of the page when I paint. So I'm just going to really put that down. If I had a glass palette, I would probably mix up some water in that with my palette. And I'm just going to switch over now to some higher quality Arches paper. And I'm going to start painting with this palette. And we're just going to have fun with it. So what I'm going to do is going to spritz that gorgeous color. So again, I'm going to be painting in what I call my art poetry style. So I love to just get dark color down in the middle. So this is pretty saturated, this watercolor that I made from the gelato. It's hard to find those gelatos that you can really get that color. So I added a lot of water, more than I needed. I'm just going to dab that up. But I love that I didn't have to mix that. The next color, I'm just going to see if I can try that with this beautiful green. Let's just see if we can get that color from this page. Not quite enough. So I'm going to find that same green, this is a great green, this one here. And I'm just gonna maybe just pull some green in the center there. I really like that. And I'm going to experiment with maybe that brighter green that I had. So I have those darker colors. I love to add in neutrals at this point. So I know I have, this is a Canadian company, the Stone Ground Paint Co. And this Mountain Rose is one of my favorite colors that has a gorgeous shimmer. And this would be a wonderful sort of neutral just to put in here. So where the water goes, the pigment follows. So the reason I'm kind of painting upward is because there's still a lot of water down here, and I want to keep this pink, and I don't want it to be totally lost and saturated out by the dark color. I'm really liking that. And I'm just going to put a little bit of that color up there as well. This green would be a really neat addition, sort of what I would call like a bonus color in a palette that, you know, it doesn't really, I don't see it in here, but wouldn't it be just a really neat thing to add as like a pop of shimmer? So it's hard to see, but that's just gorgeous. I love the variety that it gives there. And right away I can see just these gorgeous leaves have so many different hues of color in here. I'm just gonna kind of play with my color palette. Love this color. Just gonna drop in a little bit of that color. I'm not sure what the name of it is, but I'm just getting in the darks sort of in the middle here. I'm just gonna see if I can kind of rub in some of this dark to make it even darker. And because I'm using high quality 140 pound Arches watercolor paper, I can get away doing that without the paper ripping. That's cool. I love that dark for contrast. And I'm gonna wanna add in more of that iced rose color, or sorry, that mountain rose color from the Canadian company Stone Ground Paint Co. Because I am losing it a bit. So just gonna really get a whole bunch of pigment here and just sort of dab it on. I use a lot of pigment and I use a lot of water. There we go, that's better. So when you put something down and you love it, you want to repeat it. And just because I do this style, this art poetry style all the time, I paint every day, I immediately want to use my white watercolor, my titanium white, because I just see this beautiful flower here that has a lot of white in it. And white is considered a great neutral. So I'm gonna push this white down up here and just bring in, move some of that color up just for fun. And just add a bit more white. I love the opacity of the white. I see I've got some dust in there for my paper towel, but that's okay. Can always kind of get that out. And because I added the white in there, I do love that. I'm gonna add maybe a little bit of more white in here. You can always go in after and add in white acrylic paint, fluid acrylic. That's one of my tricks. It works like a gouache, an opaque watercolor. See how those, so this is what I call watercolor blooming. Right here, you can see that gorgeous bloom. And I'm gonna add some white here. And I'm just loving this palette. I haven't added in this beautiful color here. And not to worry, if I didn't add it in with watercolor, I could go back in with my watercolor pencil or say a felt pen or a crayon of that color. I'm gonna open this up and use the water because my water is getting a bit muddy, as you can see. And this is where I can see I like to drip. I'd like to do a quick drip. Now, ooh, that's interesting because it's like it hit some roots here. I didn't realize there was water there, and that's okay. Just gonna add a little bit more water and let it just drip down, whoops, even further. And I can kind of I can kind of play with this after. So right away, what I'm gonna do, I can almost make it like there's clouds around here. So you can always fix something that you aren't super happy with. Just trying to decide what color. I might use that beautiful pinkish orangish color down there, just for fun. That is very, very pink. Just with that, you can see that color back here with that, the tips of the rose. And I'm gonna add it in up here a little bit too. But I can work with that for sure, because this is abstract and intuitive, and it's just playful. So I can kind of bring it together in my style when I'm sort of at the end. Now, how to get that gorgeous purple. This purple plus this strawberry gelato purple. Let's just see. Again, I don't have a glass palette or my Stay Wet palette, but that is looking pretty darn good. And I'm gonna want to add it in up here. Not a lot of it. I'm gonna pull that dark and paint upward again, as to not lose the beautiful transparency of this mauve lilac that I'm painting. I'm already getting really excited to go back to this after it's dry and do my mark making on the top. Hi, Oakley. My little rescue dog's coming in to say hello. And you know, I liked that so much. Just gonna see how this works. I've never done this before. This is the first time today where I went over top of wet paint with the gelato to kind of bring out the color. It's interesting. Whoops, don't know, there's a little, from my brush, a little bristle. I like that it gives it texture and interest, but some of the gelatos don't dissolve too much in the water. So I probably wouldn't do that again, just because it's not my favorite in my art poetry style. What I'm gonna do is, oops, nobody got hurt. I got this lovely, lovely shimmery purple, and a little, it's more of a bluish shimmer, but maybe I can bring out that color, and I can with this one. Okay, now I'm a bit happier with it. It's a little bit brighter. And before I let this dry, there's sort of some checkpoints that I like to do. Again, this is a style that I sort of came up with after taking a ton of online classes and having a ton of inspiration from artists such as Laura Horn. Laura Horn's one of the biggest inspirations for my watercolor work. I would say, yeah, she's probably the biggest for watercolor for sure. Just gonna add some white in here. But I love to come back in and add contrast. So I want some dark areas in my work. I want some lighter areas. And I want my favorite colors. And again, I can add those in after with different supplies, but I'm gonna go with, I just want a bit more of this gorgeous green. Maybe sort of in the middle here. And maybe I'll repeat it because I'm tired of winter. I'm craving green. Maybe I'll repeat a little bit up here. Just a little bit more, dropping in the pigment and letting it move around. I'm gonna go back into this color just to create some interest, variety in the marks and the colors, just like the leaves. And I'm gonna let this breathe and dry. So I'm super happy with where it's at. And I'm gonna do a quick tidy. So I see a few little spots down here, and I'm just gonna run over some water and my round brush and dab them up with a paper towel. Because again, I sell my work, so this style is very fun and playful and intuitive, and I try to embrace the Japanese aesthetic of wabi-sabi, the art of imperfection and impermanence and asymmetry. But when you're selling your work, you also want to make sure that you present it in a way that, you know, if there's dots all over the page, I can make it intentional, or I can get them off. So I'll just see if I can zoom in a little bit on that. I'm having trouble zooming in here. Whoops, there we go.